We're good. Welcome, Elle. Thank you so much for joining us. We're so thrilled to have you. I'm
Hi.
going to hand it over to you. Nobody wants to hear from me, but I am going to read a short bio just to give everybody a little bit of background, but it doesn't tell us near enough. So you'll have to expand on it after. But you're a former journalist and PR who now writes novels under two different names. Lorna Cook is your historical fiction name, where you write novels filled with romance, intrigue, secrets, and history. And under the name Elle Cook, you write contemporary romance and women's fiction. You live in Essex with your husband and two daughters. And when you're not making up stories and characters, you usually can be found with a glass of wine in one hand and a good book in the other. It makes it tricky to turn the pages, which is funny. Your favorite authors are Kate Morton, Lucinda Riley, Liz Fenwick, Jenny Ashcroft, Iona Gray, and Holly Miller. And you will even put the wine down to read anything by these fantastic writers. So that's very good. So can you just give us a little bit of background about how did you move from journalism, PR into, do you write full time now, or what exactly is going on?
Yeah, I do. I do write full time now. I'm really lucky. I didn't at the start. How I moved from journalism and PR into novel writing is simply that like most authors, I just had an idea for a book, and the book became The Forgotten Village, which I wrote under my name. My real name is Lorna, but I don't mind. I answer to everything, so it's fine. And I had this idea for a book which became The Forgotten Village, and it was about a village that was taken by the US Army, the UK Army, and taken to requisitioned, and the people who lived there were forced to leave their.
Is she frozen?
Let back in, and I'm saying, oh, hi, I can see
Yeah,
you.
sorry,
Hi. Oh no.
you were frozen for about 15 seconds there.
Oh no, okay. We'll keep going. We'll see where we end up. And then so the idea for this book just happened, and I looked on Amazon to try and find a book, thinking this is what I wanted to read, and it wasn't there. There was nobody who'd written anything about this. So I was a bit annoyed at first, because I thought, well, this is the book I want to read, and then this idea just wouldn't go away. It wouldn't go away, and eventually I kind of came up with the plot for a book, if a book I wanted to read, and then I just sort of wrote it and hoped for the best, really. And I'm making it sound really simple, because getting into publishing isn't that easy, but that was kind of the sort of the germ of the idea as to how it happened, really. So, yeah.
So you took this book, and did you find an agent, or we have a lot of like writers or would-be writers, so
Oh, brilliant. Oh, okay, fab. So yeah, I wrote this book, and then I didn't know anybody in writing, in publishing. I knew nobody. I came from a journalism background, but I hadn't been in it for a little while. I went to work in property management for a little while. I had children. It's very hard to juggle full-time work with children anyway, so I went part-time. So then, so I didn't know anybody. So I then found somebody online who would critique the book for me, who was a published author. And then they suggested I join the Romantic Novelists Association.
doesn't like us.
There, it's kind of like a, the same sort of thing. So then I joined them, and they critiqued the book as part of the New Writers Scheme. And on the back of that, I got an agent when they recommended a certain list of people, and I sort of picked out the ones I really liked, and one of them represented Iona Gray, whose book Letters to the Lost I just adored, and Becky Ritchie is my agent, and she's Iona Gray's agent, and I just loved Iona's work, and I wrote to Becky and told her that, and then I was just really lucky that we met and really got on, and she took me on, and then got me publishing deals. So it sounds very simple that way around, but essentially that's a very condensed version of how it went.
So how long from idea to like actual published? What's that look like?
Ooh, I would say probably 2 years, maybe.
Oh, that's not bad. That's not bad.
Yeah, not too bad. It can be a very long journey, but I think it's the same over where you are. But in Britain, they submit your book to a bunch of publishers, and you wait and see if any of them want you, and if they do, if they, who's going to offer what, and then from that point, it's about a year to eventually getting that book on a shelf. It takes an incredibly long time. It's a very slow industry. But yeah, so about 2 years from writing it to eventually on shelf.
Oh, well, that's great. If anybody would like to ask a question, we do have the chat window that you can type out your question if you'd like to do that. But if you would like to ask Elle live, then please, by all means, there is a raise your hand function as well. So we can do that as well. That's always much more fun, but whatever, whatever you prefer. We do have lots of questions for you, Elle, and oh, you're back. I think you're good.
Oh, I keep freezing, do I? Sorry.
That's okay.
Okay.
I think you're good again. Yeah, you're good. Okay, so 2 names, Lorna and Elle. Tell us how that works.
So Lorna, it's so weird talking about yourself in the third person. So Lorna is me, and I write historical fiction, and it's kind of like that Beyonce Sasha Fierce thing. And Elle Cook is a name. I had to choose a name for contemporary fiction just so there was a good definition between the two, but it's a very open secret. You know, it's not a secret at all. So when my agent was pitching out, she was like, I have a writer who writes historical fiction, and this is the person who it is, basically. So it was very easily sort of given away. But it just means there's a definition, because not everybody wants to read contemporary and historical. Some people just want one, some people just want to read the other. So, you know, you don't want to have people reading historical and then picking up an L if it was written under Lorna, being like, well, this isn't what we're used to. So it's just a nice definition. But yeah, so it's worked. So half the year I write one book, and half the year I write the other book, and one book in and one book out, and never the two shall meet is my sort of motto, but it doesn't always happen. There's always a bit of crossover.
So that must be such a balancing act, because like you were so successful as a historical fiction author, and you're now going to go over into contemporary romance. And I imagine you want all those people that know you as Lorna to sort of like follow you if they're willing, but I get why you have 2 names, but that must be like kind of there's a good reason to do it and there's a bad reason to do it.
Yeah, I would have loved to have just been one name. I think it would have been easier. There were loads of weird contract issues as well. So I had contracts with foreign publishers, and I think it was just getting a bit confusing for them. So it made it very easy to have 2 different clean departures. But it works quite well. I hope it works well. And it's always lovely when I get like tagged on Instagram with somebody who's like looking for Elle Cook to tag Elle Cook, but she's on Instagram, I'm Lorna Cook, Elle Cook.
Yeah.
And so I think they find me by default and go, oh, it's you, which I always think is quite nice. So I'm like, yeah, hi. So yeah, it's quite nice.
And my next question is, which do you prefer? Is there a preference?
Oh, do you know, I love both equally, and I think it's because I treat one like a palate cleanser for the other. So I will write historical, and I'll have spent a long time researching something very specific, and at the end of doing that, it's nice to be free of that and to have something else to focus on. And I love the speed and the ease at which I enjoy contemporary, because you can just get into the head of characters rather than having to factor in a lot of historical events.
Sorry, ladies, her internet's not like us.
Am I dying again?
You're good again. You just go out for a couple seconds.
Would it help, Erin, if I know it's not ideal, but if her video was off? Because I live in a rural area, and I usually have to turn my video off because it uses a lot of broadband width.
I'm just worried about that, because then if people are watching it back, it's not as obviously as.
Yeah, get that.
But I know what you mean, Heather. Let's see how we get on. Elle, we might ask you to turn off your video.
Okay, I could do that.
Do you think that'll help? I don't know.
Okay, I'm happy to do that. You let me know. Go on, I'll do that, and then if I freeze, then you come back to me. Am I still frozen?
No, you're good.
Okay, right. Okay, carry on with the question. What was the question, or did I answer it already?
Just about which you prefer, whether it's historical fiction or
no, I love both equally. I really love them both. I am ready to do the next thing. I think if I did 2 historical fiction books a year, I'd go kind of crazy, and I think if I did 2 contemporary fiction books a year, I'd go crazy. So I love being able to do one or the other. It's lovely.
Well, 2 books a year is a lot, no?
It is a lot, yeah, it is a lot, but I do love it. I do love it. And I work full time. So Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, I'm at my desk. And yeah, it is good fun. It's great.
How do you come up with the ideas? Well, I mean, we can speak specifically about the man. We all read The Man The Man I Never Met. Sorry.
Yeah. That idea came from a personal situation, which was my husband got diagnosed with testicular cancer when he just turned 30. And although I never really thought I would ever do anything about that, it never occurred to me to write fiction on the back of it. But it was one of those crazy between the joy of homeschooling and not seeing anybody. I was getting quite quick at my work, and then it gave me a lot of thinking time, and I kind of just had this idea around two people that would not be me or my husband, but two separate people who would undergo that sort of thing, and whether it would push them together or pull them apart. And I just asked my husband, if I was to write a contemporary romance and it featured this, how would you feel about that? Because it would be a very personal moment. And he was very game for it. And then I had him read it, and then he was like, oh God, maybe not. But he was very proud that I'd done it. And I get lovely messages on the back of it from people who are like, oh, I knew somebody this happened to, and oh, men never know to check for symptoms and that sort of thing. So although there's some sadness to it from that point of view, I mean, he's fine, he's recovered now, but it's one of those kind of cancers that young men get and don't really realize they're getting, and never think that they could get it. And it was just kind of focused on Davy and how he coped with it, and focused on Hannah on a different side of the world and how she fell in love with a man through video calling, and how they made it work, or didn't make it work, and then did make it work. And I get so many messages from people who are like, oh, I'm so pleased you've highlighted how people can fall in love without actually having properly met, how they can actually. In lockdown, this happened a lot of people did sort of end up video chatting, even if they were excuse me, even if they were dating somebody who lived 20 minutes around the corner, or they're going to try and meet up and they couldn't through lockdown. And so a lot of people did end up kind of getting together in that sort of way, and it's always quite encouraging to hear those stories, really.
I think I read something in the back of the book, perhaps, because I knew it was based loosely on your husband, but did he say at some point, like, if it helps one person, then like it's worthwhile having my story out there?
Yeah, he did. And I really hope it has helped people in some way. I have had messages from people who are saying, oh, I do get my husband to check, or I do get my brother to check, and that sort of thing, because my husband was misdiagnosed about 3 times. So by the time he was diagnosed, it had gone to stage 3, I think it was. So we were quite far on. So it is nice just to be able to say, look, women, get your men folk to check, because men won't often. It won't even occur to them. They always think they're so infallible, but we are probably very naturally emotionally worrying kind of souls, and it's if it does help any one single person, then job done, I think.
So did you find, obviously you're very different from the characters, and they're not based on you at all, because I mean there's huge differences, but did you find anything other than sort of the personal relaying of that experience of testicular cancer? Did you end up using anything else that kind of hit close to home?
Oh, sorry, you froze just at the end there. So I didn't. Any personal experiences, did you say?
Just because you use the testicular cancer, and I was just wondering if there was anything else in the book that hit close to home that you'd experienced yourself. Did you have a long distance relationship or anything like that?
No, I didn't. And for all the excitement in the world, I have to live vicariously through my characters, because I met my husband when we were in our teens, and we've been together since we were about 18 years old. So no, any exciting emotional journeys that characters go on, I've either purloined from friends who have been through very exciting things, or I've just had to use my imagination.
It's funny because I was reading the book, obviously, and I had met him, but I met a boyfriend in Africa when I was on a safari, and we were together for about 21 days, and then we went our separate ways, and we spent the next year on the phone with each other. So it really It really
Oh,
rang true to me, how further you can develop a relationship just by talking.
oh, fantastic. See, it happens. It happens more than you think. And I love that. I really, really love that. It's just fabulous. It's just fabulous.
Danetta says, I met my husband online 20 plus years ago, so I was able to identify with the never met aspect, but that was where that similarities ended. You definitely caught the long distance issues.
Oh, I'm pleased. I'm pleased. That's lovely.
Natasha has a question. She says it's not related directly to the book, but growing up or in your free time, what genre did you prefer reading? She just wonders if it influences your reading today.
What genre do I prefer reading? I do love both. Oh, it's a very boring answer, isn't it? I do love reading historical, but I think I might have maxed out a little bit on reading historical, especially in World War II. And I write a lot of World War II, but I do find that I can't read other people's World War II novels when I'm writing my own, in case you don't want to steal anything accidentally or have anything they do influence you. So I try to steer a little bit clear and read a bit more widely. I kind of got into crime a bit more, and I think that was another sort of lockdown result. I think a lot of people were moving towards romance because they wanted a break from the horror of the outside world. And I think I'd always read romance, and I'd always read love stories, and I'd always read something with a happy ending. And if it's historical, there's always two people getting together. So I'd always read that. But I started discovering crime writers like Gillian McAllister and Sarah Pearse and Lucy Foley, and that sort of Agatha Christie locked room mysteries that I love watching on telly, but I never really read. So I started reading that. I think authors that probably influence my writing are sort of the ones that you listed. The historical authors are sort of Jenny Ashcroft and Iona Gray, and Kate Morton, who is just, the reigning champion of dual time novels, is definitely Kate Morton. And I just adored those novels. I emulate their success and just want to be them, that sort of thing. And in contemporary, Holly Miller, who wrote The Sight of You, that's one of my favorite books. It's just so beautiful and heartbreaking and just lovely. And Josie Silver as well, One Day in December. Yeah, those are sort of my big ones, my big key ones, I would say.
Okay. Speaking of your historical fiction, so you've written 7 historical fictions, is that right?
Yes, I've written 6. My 6th one is coming out in March.
Okay. So maybe 7 books total. I got that wrong. And well, so all in the historical fiction, on every single cover, there is a person with their back towards you.
Oh, yes. My next one has got a face.
Oh.
I know. I was quite surprised. It's always back of woman walking towards scenery without form, but this one has a face.
And is that people are always so our members are always so fascinated with the sort of how the covers happen. And is that like, do you have a say in that, or do you get final approval? And it seems depends on the author on how much say they have, or
do you know, I think if you really hate it, you can get some change. I kind of learned very early on that there's not a great deal you can do unless I guess you really hate it, but I've never really hated my covers. And I think they've got more beautiful as the books have kind of, as the more books I've written. So my next one I really love. This really beautiful sunset in it. I really loved that. And the Scottish one I wrote, The Forbidden Promise, looks very sort of Highlandy. So I love that they kind of do what they're meant to do, and they're quite evocative, and that is not my department. So I'm not here to design my own covers. They would look awful if I was left in charge. So I'm very much respectful of what they do. And also it's nice to see sort of with my Elle Cook books that the direction that the publishers took the books in both America and in UK were not at all what I would have thought they'd have done, because they're quite cartoony to an extent. But it's so interesting to see how well received they've been, and it definitely shows that authors should not be in charge of their own covers, because I would have picked something very different and was really surprised when I saw them. But I really loved them, and knowing that's kind of the direction that the books are going in, I'm like, every time I've seen my, saw the one for The Last Train Home and was like, oh yeah, okay, lovely, that's really beautiful. So I'm really pleased, and you get to see all stages of it. So I saw like a general outline of the people, and then you see them when they're sort of filled in a bit more, and how the illustrator works and what their thought process is. And there's so much that goes into them that, we should definitely not be allowed to choose our own covers. We would be useless at it.
Heather has a funny question. Heather would like to know if Davy and Hannah's relationship will last after they finally meet, now that they're living in the same town.
You get two people together, you have to make them be together. I think that's the point of the romance, is that you bring two people together who are perfectly right for each other. There might be some imperfections along the way, but yes, they have to be together forever. Like, in my head, they're always together forever. So that's how it should be.
Thank you for answering that, because I feel like some authors would be like, oh, I don't know what happens.
Oh, really? Isn't that interesting? No, well, I was always taught this. Well, I haven't done any writing courses, but when you listen to other authors, or you sort of the Romantic Novelist Association, and you discuss sort of plot and go to conferences and things, and yeah, the point of the romance is that they have to be together forever. Otherwise, what's the point? What's the point of of you being with them? It's a bit like Darcy and Elizabeth, Bennet. You read offshoot books. I used to read offshoot books. I was so desperately excited. Oh yes, like an offshoot book of Pemberley and Jane Austen, and let's have more, and let's follow all the characters. And they do horrific things to them and break them up, and like, no, that's not allowed. What have you done? So no, once they're together forever, and it's how it's meant to be.
Natasha wants to know if there's any chance for a sequel.
I do get asked that a bit, actually, if there's a chance for a sequel. I wonder if Grant needs a story, or I don't know. People did want to know what happened a little bit after as well, because it ends with them just, at the airport, and then that's it, the end.
Yeah.
I just thought, no.
Something to think about. On that note, can you tell us a little bit about The Last Train Home?
Yeah, The Last Train Home is about hang on a sec, I've got a copy here, not that you can see it, but it's good to remind myself. So it's about Abby and Tom, who meet each other on a tube train in London, on the London Underground, and they meet in 2005, and the train derails, and he carries her out of the wreckage, and they prior to the crash, for a few minutes, they've been having some quite flirty banter, and then they end up through fair means and foul just becoming friends, and really sort of looking after each other and leaning on each other a lot. And then to the point where it looks like they're going to get quite romantic, and something happens to stop them getting quite romantic, and they go in separate directions for the next 7 years until they kind of find each other and come back to each other, and move away from each other. And you follow them as they deal with life and love and other relationships, and it's a nice happy ending. But it's just a lovely, I really enjoyed writing it. It was good fun. It was a nice book after the Man I Never Met, to sort of bring another couple together and see how they got on.
It sounds brilliant. Rita would like to know if The Man I Never Met was made into a movie, if you could picture who would play Hannah, Davy, and George.
Oh, do you know, I me this, and I said Chris Evans would play Davy, and he went, oh no, he's far too old. I was like, he's my age. But of course he's like 20 years too old. But in my head, I kind of had that. I think I described Davy at one point as sort of like a superhero-y Chris Hemsworthy character, or a Hemsworth brother. So I think we're kind of going for that all-American kind of superhero-y look. You can pick your favorite one and your favorite age bracket. But no, I don't really picture them as, they have all the sort of the traits of real humans. I try to make them as real as I can, but I never really see their faces.
Right.
Their faces are always a bit of a blur. So I don't know. Isn't that a cop-out of an answer? Sorry, I've given you Chris Evans. That's about all I've got, really.
If anybody else has any ideas, you can put them in the chat. It's always amusing, especially for
Yeah.
Elle to see.
Yeah, I'd love to know. There's obviously some celebrities that I probably haven't heard of in America who would be so well suited for it. But yeah, no, my mind just keeps wandering back to the same people over and over again. Nice to see some good ones.
Heather has written here that part of her kept wondering if George was going to cheat on Hannah since he seemed distant. Was that ever a thought?
Yeah, it was. I decided against that, but also I just think it was George was just meant to be a holiday romance, and he was never meant to be right for her. He was a holiday, not his fault that he works strange hours, but he was just not meant to be the man for her, really. He was just very wrapped up in his own world, essentially.
Fair enough. Okay, so we've covered the next contemporary fiction, but there is a historical fiction on the horizon as well.
Yeah, and this is my sixth one. It's called The Lost Memories, and it's set in World War II in Suffolk in England, and it features an American Air Force pilot and a British land girl, and about the romance that they have and how it affects the future generations down the line. That's what that's about.
When do the two publish, actually?
Oh, so the Last Train Home is out now. I think it's out in America as well already. I know you can get it online for sure. And in March next year, that's when The Lost Memories is out.
Okay, so you wrote those two a while back then.
Yeah, I always do. I actually wrote The Lost Memories in 2019, but I moved on to something that I felt was better, which then became The Forbidden Promise, which was my sort of Scottish Highlands book. And so I put aside The Lost Memories and knew that I could make it more than it was. So I came back to it when I had a quieter moment and just revisited it, really. So I'm really proud of that book now. But at the time, you write something called That Tricky Second Novel, That Tricky Second Album. So I've enjoyed doing that again. But yeah, I did finish it. I finished it about sort of a year ago now.
So then there's other stuff that's you've written more that we maybe can't know about yet.
What have I got that? Yeah, I'm just working on my third Elle Cook book now. I've just finished the first draft and I've just had my structural edits back. And today I actually launched into them, which I always put off. I hate structural edits. They're the absolute worst bit of all of this whole process. So I really put those off until I absolutely have to do them. But I launched in today to do those.
And that will publish in 2024.
So no, that's going into 2025.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a summer book. It was meant to be November, but they're moving it back to May so that they can really give it a lovely summery jacket. It's set around wedding seasons in Britain, where basically if you're of a certain age in Britain, as I'm sure you are over in the US, every weekend throughout 3 months is basically going to other people's weddings. Sure. And so that's kind of what this book is set around that season. So because my books kind of start quite wintry so far, so it's nice to kind of move into a sort of summery time. I've not done that yet.
Amazing. So one question we love to ask our authors is if there's any and this puts you on the spot and you probably won't be able to think of anything, but any podcasts or like Netflix series or or even any television series that you have watched recently or just ever that you like really love to recommend to others?
Ooh, okay. I'm going to go back in time to recommend The Tudors.
Oh, we lost you.
Started watching The Tudors. Oh, have I disappeared again? Or am I back?
Sorry. You need to. Can you start from the beginning?
Unstable. Sorry. Yes. So I would recommend The Tudors. The Tudors, which I think you guys had over in America as well, with Jonathan Rhys-Meyers. I would recommend that, and I ended up rewatching that. It's one of those series that lasts forever and you think I will never watch this again, a bit like Game of Thrones. You're like, I will never go back and do this all over again. But my husband was never really into watching historical drama, and we were just having a whole conversation about how mad the Tudors were, and I was like, right, we have to watch the Tudors. So we watched that, and then we discovered on the back of that we're sort of blitzing what did we do after that? Oh, we're doing the Spanish Queen now, about Catherine of Aragon. And I didn't know anything about her really, other than, you know, she gets cheated on and Anne Boleyn arrives, and that's where the story starts. So it's nice to go back to the beginning and see that. So I would recommend those if you're feeling at all like you want some raunchy costume drama. They're very cool. I like those.
Did
And
you, as a Brit, did you ever watch The Crown?
oh God, I love The Crown. I love The Crown. It's so good. I think it's just really well done. It's so fantastic. Yeah, I love it. Are you watching that?
Yeah, we watch it here, but I'm in Canada, and I always wonder what the actual like British people think of it, because, well, I'd love to hear what the Queen thought of it, or
Yeah.
what any of the actual people featured in it think of it. But I wonder, like, I think you have better insight into whether it's done well or done poorly.
I think it's done incredibly well. I think who was the first queen in it? The younger girl, Claire Foy. I think she was the best queen so far. And I wish they'd sort of aged her in a way and let her run with it, rather than replacing her. But I think it's fantastically done. And I've learned so much about British history, you know, especially through like the 50s, that I never really knew. I'm not sure what the royal family think of it, but I think the general consensus in Britain is that it's pretty good. we quite like it. Yeah, we always look forward to it every November.
Fair enough. Okay, we have another question here. We're going to wrap up shortly, but Donetta is asking if you work from an outline, or does the character dictate where the book goes?
Oh, I did. In my first book, I wrote a really serious outline and I tried to stick to it like glue, and it just doesn't really work. And I used to hate this phrase that authors have, which is, oh, the characters just don't do what I want them to do. And I'm like, what? That's ridiculous. You're in charge. But I get it now. I do get it, because sometimes they're having conversations with other people and that conversation will take them in a different direction. And I think it's really good to be that fluid and that free, and to be able to say, oh, okay, we're going in this direction now because that feels natural. And I think if you try and shoehorn your characters into a plot that doesn't always work, you're going to make life really hard for yourself.
Fair enough. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. And for sharing.
That's okay.
Can I turn your video back on? There we go.
Yeah, let me try. Yeah.
See if it'll work, just to say goodbye.
Okay.
There we go. Can we see the cover of The Last Train? And she freezes.
No, I don't think it is. I'm just going to stop it. It's not working. I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you everybody for joining us. And thank you so much, Lorna, for joining us as well. It's been great to talk to you. And we look forward to all the books that are to come.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been so lovely to be here. And despite the internet problems, thank you so much.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Bye.